Are we live? I think we're live, but I do think there's a delay between what I see and what YouTube sees. So while I am checking that here, let's get some Denver sucks in the chat. Oh, and also, you're going to have to be very careful today because we are live from the ranch. And hold on a second, it's starting. I'm about to see how well this is working. Okay. No, there was that delay, and I had to wait to see it. So here we are. We're here now. So Denver sucks in the chat, and you have to be careful today because, as the title says, we are live from Observer Ranch. So providing the color tint in this room for today, I don't have the normal red light. It's a salt lamp, which means everybody needs to be extra careful this evening. We're going to do this the same way we normally do it. This will be the first time we're trying out Restream, the new technology that allows me to be actually a real podcaster, as opposed to whatever the hell was happening the last several years. We're going to go over some of the critical things that happened since we last spoke. And after that, we're going to do a Q&A. Does that sound all right? All right, so let me start off here by go ahead and sharing some screenery. How's that look? Okay, looks like I'm there. So first and foremost, little space weather update. There really is no space weather update. The sun has been about as quiet as we thought it was going to be. The sunspot situation is such that it's not the biggest risk on our star right now. Now that we're getting a pretty good look at that coronal hole, if you can see it, when we first identified this coronal hole, the northern portion of it was much harder to see, and it didn't look like it was this big. It was largely obscured by the brightness of the minor active region that's right in front of it. But now that it's turned closer towards central heliographic longitudes, we can really easily see the breadth of that coronal hole. That's definitely going to give us some kind of a surge in solar wind. And NOAA is already forecasting a level 1 solar storm at some point, either tomorrow or the next day, due to the slow-moving CME. One day later, that coronal hole stream is going to arrive. And so for the next 24 hours, that filament that's out in front of it, and even maybe at the end of that, 24 hours after that, the filament that's behind the coronal hole, if one of those erupts, we're going to have a boom, boom, boom successive impact scenario. Have they shown any signs of stability, of instability? Not that I've seen, but at the same time, that can happen. When I go to sleep this evening, I can wake up and that filament might be gone. So that's the main thing that we're watching for in the sun right now. Interestingly, it has nothing to do with sunspots, even that big group. If you take a look at the bright patch over on the departing limb, it's already far enough turned that even a massive CME is only going to clip us. So we have the minor CME that's going to hit probably one day from now. A day after that, we have the coronal hole stream, and we've got to watch those two filaments to see how they behave. In terms of what's going on, just real quick reminder, last time we were talking about the out-of-cycle release, the extremely embarrassing thing that geologists had to do. They had to reissue the world magnetic model because the magnetic poles were moving too fast. And we were talking about this where we showed that in spring of 2025, so earlier this year, just one season after they issued the latest in December of 2024 world magnetic model, they're already seeing early signs of forecast degradation, growing errors. And so we might be headed towards that again. If it happens twice in 3 of the 5-year increments, that really should wake up most of the official scientists. But anyway, with that in mind, and the fact that this is important because we are in a magnetic pole shift. And this is the kind of stuff that we've been saying for a decade. Hey, watch when this happens. This will be the sign that things are speeding up. And like literally all of that stuff is happening. That's what we're going to be talking about in a little bit here in just a second. Anyway, some pretty interesting things that have happened here. We have the first identification of what we originally called the Noah event, which could end up being called the Tianqi event. They still don't have a name for the one 6,000 years ago. We have the first evidence of it from the Middle East. This is from Iran. Don't forget, we've seen evidence from this in Colombia, in the Americas, and in Asia. We've seen this in Siberia, China, and North Korea. So it's already a well-established thing. But when you go back and you even include some of the previous studies that showed the paleo intensity low, the weak point in Earth's magnetic field about 6,000 years ago, you've got a total of about 15 studies, and they all use different dating methods. And they give you everything from about 5,500 years ago to 7,000 years ago. Now, here they've got 5,000 BCE, which would be 7,000 years ago. I happen to know these authors. I actually thought I remembered, but I went back and I checked. The way they do isotope dating most often in their studies, things come back a little too old, so we can say that's less than 7,000. This is another piece of evidence of the event 6,000 years ago. And so we got that this past week, and so that was an important one. We also have one of the first low latitude discoveries confirming what. Here they're talking about the Greenland Sea excursion. This has also been called the Vostok excursion. It was about 60,000 years ago. For those who don't know, Vostok is in Antarctica. And so this one shows up really strongly at the current North and South poles, like really, really strongly there, more so than anywhere else at lower latitude. But here they found it at Oahu in Hawaii. You know, the dating methods, problem ridden though they may be, they do get better over time. And so does their analysis of sediment and other things like that. So a solid confirmation from low latitude here. One of the first ones actually in the record right now of the event, approximately 60,000 years ago. So that's not exactly unimportant. Anyway, I was talking about what we're going to be getting to. We had another sighting of the pink aurora. This has happened so many times in the last 3 years. I worry that it's going to become so commonplace that people don't understand what it is and why it's important. Just based on seeing headlines that show it as like a cool thing to see, and they don't really actually explain what's happening. So this is, and I don't actually know how to do this. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Save image to downloads. And give me a moment here. All right, I'm going to get this. We're going to get it all by itself here in a way that we can actually work with it and play with it without a bunch of other stuff getting in the way. Okay, so what we're looking at here is this is the altitude and the color. And I know up top that actually kind of looks pink. That's meant to be red. And so that's meant to be red, green, purple, and blue. And while the purple and blue are rare, they're only slightly more rare than the pink ones. And the pink comes from an overexcitement right at the boundary layer between where the green and the purple are supposed to be. And so that pink, which we saw, well, let me figure out how to do this. Come like that. The pink, how we saw it was down at the bottom of the green there. Boy, this is not so easy to do on a multi-screen thing. All right, come on now. That would be about right here. I don't know if that's making any sense to you. But that's about where that would be. About right here. Oh, no, you guys can't see that because it's not on the screen. Okay. Okay, I'll just go back to that. All right, so forget all this stuff on the left. I know up top here it looks pinkish, but it's actually red. And then the pink we saw in those auroras, that's basically right down here, right at the bottom edge of this. And so that's actually above the purple and blue auroras, which are, just only slightly more rare than the pink ones. The reason it's rare is because we don't get penetration down all the way to the bottom layer there very often. It's not something that happens in all but the most extreme geomagnetic storms. And so the fact that it keeps happening, the fact that it happened again, and everything about what happened last week didn't, it's right on par with what we've been saying for the last several years. Let me go back up there, actually. We've been, for a decade, we said, watch for when the auroras go crazy. That's how we're going to know. They've been going crazy. And this is the kind of thing that tells us, okay, yeah, the plasma is penetrating deeper and deeper into the atmosphere. And it's not because the sun is pounding us harder and harder and harder and over again. This is normal, even slightly weaker than normal space weather activity. And so another sign that the auroras are still going crazy. Now, this is not like the auroras seen in Florida last year where you could, in one event, you can like wake somebody up to be like, whoa, okay, now like even I know that doesn't make sense. This is harder to explain to somebody, the concept of why they should care about the pink auroras. But I suppose for right now, I'll have to settle for you knowing it's just still happening. It's still happening over and over again. Okay. Now we come to this. This is so annoying to me. So how do I even describe this? This is the cryptocron thing from this morning. And I have spent the last several years very happily not seeing this word in the peer-reviewed literature at all, hoping it was just going to die. But here we are seeing it again, so I figure I might as well let you guys in on on one of the many pieces that makes putting this whole disaster cycle puzzle together much more challenging than it should be. So you might be saying, what is a cryptocron and how does this differ from the geomagnetic excursions, the full cron geomagnetic reversals that we talk to you guys about most often? And then you can see here, let me see if I can do this. And for whoever said I'm getting into boomer territory when I try to work multiple screens, you, with love. So basically, in their world, a cryptocron is a short geomagnetic event in which Earth's magnetic field reverses polarity for a period of less than 10 to 30,000 years. So that's basically very close to our working definition of a geomagnetic excursion, right? Mainstream science can be broken down into this right here. And so up at the top, you can see we've got the full reversal, the geomagnetic excursion, which is what I talk about most of all with the disaster cycle. It's about the excursions. And then you've got the cryptocron thing there as well. Now, I don't have any quarrels with the definition of a geomagnetic reversal. The geomagnetic excursion, definition. This is applicable a good bit of the time, but Lechamp looks like it did a little more than that in terms of the magnetic field changes. The cryptochrone definition, that's again very close to our working definition of the excursion. A short-lived geomagnetic event, often manifesting as tiny anomalies in magnetic records, possibly due to intensity variations or brief aborted reversals. That is some geologists' working definition. And we go down to the bottom line. Duration of the geomagnetic reversal, 1,000 to 10,000 years. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Geomagnetic excursion, typically thousands of years, but shorter than reversals. Well, no, because we know that, even mainstream science has, the average of their words has this wrong here. By the way, this is Grok just doing a quick check of it, but we know that they can happen in as little as a human lifetime. And it's not just one. They've seen several that have happened very quickly. And so there's a problem with the mainstream view of excursions there. And then we look at cryptochrone, very short, often less than 1,000 years for the duration, sometimes as brief as hundreds of years. Well, that's very much closer to what we've been talking about, the working definition for geomagnetic excursion. Now, here's the thing. When you look at this right here, how mainstream science views these three things, if you've done any looking at any of the geomagnetic events that we've talked about, they overlap these things like crazy. And in reality, this is not the most appropriate way to be looking at the geomagnetic changes on the planet. And it's one of the reasons why I was so happy that cryptochrone was sort of fading away. I had thought, hey, wait a minute, maybe geologists have finally pulled their heads out of their butts and realized we don't need this third category. We have the full chron reversals and we have the rapid flips, the geomagnetic excursions, and that's all you need. You don't need this third category, especially because this third category has aspects of it that are closer to a geomagnetic reversal, and then some that are less severe than what mainstream says the excursion is. It just doesn't make sense, in addition to the fact that it causes confusion in the same way that it was initially very challenging for me to convince people that this cycle exists, because you've got the Gothenburg geomagnetic excursion, for example, isotope dated to everywhere between 11,500 and 14,000 years ago. That's not what happened. It was at one time and probably about 12,000 years ago. But because these readings come in all over the place, it confuses the situation. This, having reversals, excursions, cryptochrons, completely confuses this part of the process as well. In addition to the fact that it doesn't make sense and it's wrong to even have them categorized like this. So to basically, as an antidote to this madness, I've created this, and this is basically how we should be thinking about it. And I was actually thinking about doing this, but I'll do it in front of you anyway. This is for the full cycle, but we should actually just put the half cycle on there. And so here's where we are. We have the full chron reversal. That's the full magnetic reversal, full pole shift. And then we have the excursions or cryptochrons. I don't actually care if you like one name or the other, but we're talking about the same darn thing. Okay. And so, first of all, can you guys still see me and hear me? I have no idea if you guys can actually see me. Okay, no, I'm assuming you can because there's somebody talking about the confusion. I just realized I hadn't been looking at the chat because I'm teaching right now. And yeah, so I wouldn't know if you guys were just yelling at me that something was wrong. And my phone's way over here, so I can't see it either. Full chron reversal, that's the one that happens hundreds of thousands of years apart. They say sometimes in the past they were recording them every 200,000 years. It's currently been over 700,000, nearly 800,000 years. since the last full Chron reversal. The excursions, those are the ones that we talk about with Earth's disaster cycle. They happen every few thousand years. The duration, the full Chron reversals, those are the ones that take a long time. The rapid ones, the ones that can happen in less than a human lifetime, that's the excursions. The description, it's really just about, I mean, virtually the same thing happens, but over a much shorter time scale. In terms of magnetic field loss, we do know that during the full Chron reversals, it is almost always a majority of the field loss. If you look over to the excursion side, you see that one could be as low as 50%. There are definitely some excursions where it looks like the intensity of Earth's magnetic field did not drop down more than about 50%. Then again, Le Champ, we got down to only 5% of normal strength, which would be the high end there, 95% field loss. So even still, if you look down to the last line, I put a danger line on there. The danger of the full Chron reversals are still just moderate because of the duration. When this thing unfolds over 1,000 years, no one species has to endure the vast majority of the changes. When you have the excursion, you have much larger change per lifetime. I guess if you can understand that concept. So that one's going to be more severe, which is what we've seen. So I hope that made sense. I really hate the fact that I even had to bring up the cryptochron. That's like super annoying to me, but it's a thing that happened. So yeah. Okay. For those who don't know, winter tour. It's really looking like Orlando's going to sell out way before I thought it was going to, which is super cool. And if it actually, oh, Adrian's here. What's up, buddy? What's up, Adrian? Suspects guy. Hello. If Orlando sells out before my birthday in, come on, do math, 15 days, I'm going to have to add another day and maybe convince August Dunning to come up for something on Sunday as well. But yeah, link should be below. It's also below the morning news videos every day. Observer Ranch. Winter tour. Come, it's fun. Also, give me a moment to shout out goldobservers.com. As I've mentioned in the morning news, sometimes they're doing a instant match in silver. So basically, like, you pay the price for the precious metal and then they just price match you. I don't really understand how anybody can do that, especially with how much silver has gone up recently. And did you guys see their they tried to artificially knock it down and it came right back in one day? I don't know if you guys saw that this past week. There are some signs actually that now might not be the worst time, in addition to the fact that, remember, when we get to the barter stage, gold and silver are still going to be useful, especially in most other people's minds. And then in the aftermath, gold is the perfect electromagnetic radiation deflector. Silver is the perfect antimicrobial. It releases antimicrobial ions upon contact with blood. In a pinch, it is fantastic for helping to prevent infection, which will be one of the top causes of death in the disaster. Remember that. Goldobservers.com. If you haven't prepped to that extreme, you're going to have to do it eventually. Why not keep it in the family with other observers? Goldobservers.com. Anyway, so I believe that will take us to the question and answer portion. That took almost 25 minutes. The science portion took a little longer than usual this week. Sorry, not sorry. Let's see. How do I do this? Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Will that work? Yeah, that'll work just fine. What do we think? Cool. All right. So now we can go to the questions. What do we have? What's on your mind? What tickles your fancy on this lovely evening? Well, that's awesome, Danielle. I hope they know that you found your way to them through me. Question: what proof is there that shows moon landings were to find nova level isotopes on the moon? Uh, so Dakota, I presume that we're past the proof that they went to the moon, which is good because that's pretty definitive. But it annoys me to have to go through that again. If you take a look at the footage and the audio recordings of the astronauts, it's very clear they were there for the black glass. That's why they were sent there. They were sent to find the zap hits and the black glass. August Dunning explains that extremely well in some of our 2020 and 2021 videos. I know I don't list those in the morning news under the homework, but some of the playlists on the channel include some of that stuff. We do go over that, although it's probably appropriate to do so again. In fact, when August comes for his weekend at the ranch next year, we're basically focusing on the micronova itself. And that's going to include, all the stuff about how the ancients, why would the ancients fear the sun? Like, what did it do to make them afraid of it? And if you think about that, you're like, well, wait a minute. It had to have done something outside of normal, or else why would they be afraid of the sun? To what happened on the moon. And it was for those of you who've been around a while and you remember when we did that disaster cycle episode on the moon, August was very critical in there. In fact, I'm pretty sure I included a portion from August in that video. Having worked at NASA, he was he was invaluable for that purpose. We have 3 tickets to Las Vegas. Talked to our auto mechanic today. He's looking forward to seeing the movie. Live Like a Viking. Susie, that's fantastic. Can't wait to see you. Please comment in depth about Ethical Skeptic's latest posts about how a lot of the ancient megaliths align with the future North Pole. I haven't done a deep dive on it. I saw it. It looks interesting on its face, but I haven't done a deep dive on it yet. I've been very busy here. Sorry, but I don't have an in-depth thing to say about it. He's got a lot of really cool evidence. It's going to be great when he comes to the ranch next year, guys. It really is. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to try to film as much of it as possible. Scrolling. Lorraine, thank you for the teal pair. Appreciate it. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Is that a black eye? No, it's not a black eye. It's just the fact that I've got the camera over there and there's the shading, I got kind of like a Luke Skywalker thing in Empire or Return of the Jedi. I've got a little bit of that where we've got this over here, but no black eye. Sorry. I am a little tired. We're a little light on sleep. I appreciate your concern. Tiny is coming to the Las Vegas event. That's fantastic. Alex Bill just put out a video showing the hidden meaning of Teletubbies, 4 horses of the apocalypse living underground. Ewok jerky, that is an interesting and terrifying sounding thing you just said. What about the moon's magnetic occlusion with Earth, perhaps because of the weakening field and the full moon makes pink aurora? There is probably some level of feedback, although I'm not sure if I would think that's more of a ring current and Van Allen belt thing. I can say I've never seen any science on that, but that's an interesting thought, Bovine. Interesting thought. Ben, will you let me pay for my stay at the ranch with silver? I don't know. You'd have to ask Catherine about that. You'd have to ask Kat that question. That's a Kat call on that. Regarding health conditions, my son's epilepsy has been pretty rough recently, connected to solar activity ? Usually talk about heart issues. There's definitely connections between solar activity and epilepsy. All kinds of seizures, actually. Pretty much all of the spike events will do it, both high and low, actually. And so that's, now at sunspot maximum, that's everything from solar flares to geomagnetic storms and proton events. And in sunspot minimum, that can be KP0 days. I'm going to just explain that a little more as we're on the way down. But for those who've been around a while, I'm sure you remember KP0 days, the most deadly space weather health days that there are. That's not what's happening right now. But yeah, pretty much solar, for where we are right now, there's several. And when I'm talking about like 10 to 15 that quickly come to mind about how solar flares and geomagnetic storms and high energy proton events trigger things like that. And so that would be things like seizure events, migraines, and other things that would fit into that category of, we're like, all right, it's not cancer, it's not necessarily autoimmune, but it's this thing that just some people have, and it's just some of the time, episodically. All of those things, again, like seizures, migraines, those tend to flare up during either solar flares, geomagnetic storms, or polar proton storms, polar radiation storms, things like that. Good question. Talked in depth on that, didn't I? Scrolling. Thank you for the baby lemon, Bush Ninja. Are the miles of solar panels north of Denver International Airport for the underground base? I have no idea. Cool question. And are some of them turned the wrong way in preparation for the flip? I have no idea about that. I've actually never seen those panels. I go to Denver almost never. I can say I've never been out north of the airport. Getting to the airport is such a pain in the ass in Denver. Everything's a pain in the ass in Denver. How does the acceleration and deceleration force differ in the crustal displacement? Thanks for the new book. I would say they don't differ because the ice is the thing that does both of them. When the ice finds its place, any movement one way or another, the ice will act against it. And so if that's not what you're asking, I'm not sure. If you're asking about speed, I don't know. I can tell you that when we say it'll take about 1 day to do, we calculated 17 miles per hour per minute acceleration. So, I mean, in theory, you could feel it. Maybe not. Especially when looked at as a function of the speed we're already moving. 0 to 17 is a little different than 500 to 517. You feel one more than the other because of, being relative. Okay, did I catch up? How about that? I caught up. What is a geomagnetic jerk? A geomagnetic jerk is something that happens approximately every 4 to 7 years. They say it originates in the core, but basically what it manifests as, for those of us living here on Earth, is a sharp, jerk of Earth's magnetic field. Earth's magnetic field, it's not like this constant shell. It's constantly spinning. It's sort of like recycling in on itself and puffing back out, coming out of the South Pole, wrapping around to the north. And so it's kind of like a constant in motion thing, but it has these jerk events. And sometimes it's not just a jerk-like event. Sometimes it comes with an acceleration of the trend that is currently taking place with the magnetic poles. And so we have seen most of the accelerations to get to where we are now happen during geomagnetic jerks. So very good question there. The micronova is the Bitcoin blockchain bulk erase. Yes, unfortunately it is. See you next week. The experience, right on. That's about 2 weeks away, but I hear what you're saying. Reboot Congress. Can't wait to see it. It's going to be a lot of fun. How does the crustal displacement during the Ice Age versus now compare? I mean, It's a good question. I imagine that during the Ice Age, it would be far more devastating, if I had to guess. Yeah, that's my guess. I think it's an accurate one. Birdie says, Ranch was great. Hope to see you next year, Birdie. It was so nice to see you. You give great hugs. Scrolling. Space weather news. How do we know that intergalactic nova dust can't penetrate the heliosphere? So some might be able to. Here's the issue. We know that the vast majority of it is trapped within the nova remnant. So it would basically be the nova isotopes from the pre-solar system stellar nova, the one that seeded our solar system. The sun is not a Milky Way first generation star. Some other star was here, went boom. It was a massive one. And the leftovers created the sun and the Centauri system, a whole bunch of the nearby. We're talking about a megastar that blew here. And so it would have to be that. And not only that, but the nova isotopes we're most interested in, it's not things like iron 60 at the bottom of the ocean. It's the much more short-lived isotopes such that those ones could not be left over. They would have decayed fully by now, and they wouldn't have the time to get here from any of the other stars. So it's not that nova dust can't enter. It's that for the nova dust, for the nova isotopes that Doug Vogt identified, there's the specific problem of them having very short half-lives, meaning they couldn't have come from very far away, and they couldn't have been created a very long time ago. This had to be nearby and not long ago. And the fact that they only show up in these same disaster layers, whether it's the fossils or the microtectites, etc., it would be impossible for that kind of a coincidence in that layering to happen if it was anything other than the sun during these events. Good question, though. So another stupid question. Where are we on the solar cycle? Are we still in solar maximum or transitioning to minimum? All right, fair enough. Good question. Let me go to click you. So we actually went over this not long ago, so I'm going to do this kind of quickly. About 50% of sunspot cycles have a double peak. They go up, they come down, and then they peak again. We have no idea if that's going to happen here or it's just going to descend down into sunspot minimum. Where we are right now, this is 100% still classified as sunspot maximum. Let me go ahead and show you last sunspot cycle on this chart as well. Even where we are now, this is about the peak of anything we saw during the last sunspot cycle. This, where we are right now, even though we are off of our peak from last year, this still is sunspot maximum level activity. Is it going to go back up again? We don't know. That's what we're waiting to see. We should probably have a good idea probably by the spring of 2026. We should have a pretty good idea of what the remainder of the sunspot cycle is going to look like. And actually, at that point, we should be getting very close to having the first solar polar fields data that tells us how strong the next sunspot cycle is going to be. And how many of you are waiting to see about grand solar minimum? Next year, probably, to be safe, middle to second half of next year, I'll be able to make the first forecast of the next sunspot cycle based on the polar fields data. And I'll be able to tell you whether grand solar minimum is on the table or not. But we are probably, middle to second half of next year away. If the data shows something before then, Trust me, I'm watching, and I will say so. Sky, thanks for that good prompt. Have you seen or commented on the huge art display in main atrium? No, I haven't been there in a very, very long time. I have no idea what's in there. But if it's sort of subconsciously screaming Cosmic Super Bowl, well, somebody should be telling people consciously or subconsciously. Do we have evidence of the full Chron and 6,000 year cycle overlapping? Couldn't they compound effects to make an extra special spicy catastrophe? I mean, in theory, yes, they could. The problem is the last time we had a full Chron event, it was like 780,000 years ago, and we can't really peg a 6,000 year cycle that far back. I mean, even that full Chron reversal itself, there's like a 15,000 year window both sides. I mean, that means like there's like a 30,000 year range, even in the mainstream error bars. You're talking 5,000-6,000 year cycles just in that error range. So we don't know, but that's a fair question and not a bad one. I don't remember seeing you talk about the glass spheres with water inside that China found on the moon. I actually did discuss those back when they found them, actually. Chinese scientists believe the water inside is sourced from the sun. Sure seems like additional confirmation of the sun's micronova. I agree. Man, when was that? I don't remember when that was, but I do remember I talked about. I'll tell you what, if somebody has access to that, I would love to revisit that at some point. And of course, for those of you who don't remember, the easiest way to get something to me is to send it as a DM on Twitter. X. I'm going to call it Twitter until the end of time, or until the sun explodes, which same thing. But yeah, I definitely talked about that a little bit. I agree 100% with your description right there. No doubt about it. The Chinese went up to see for themselves what NASA already knew. What is your favorite form of protein? Steak. Thanks for that extremely pertinent question there. My dad recently told me he's on his last life. His previous one, he was a business owner. He said we change life every 6 or 7 years. Interesting, because he was Royal Navy, not an observer. Huh. Did you ask him what his last life will be then, if it's not business owner? What if it's help you prepper? That would be good, huh? Can filaments be big enough to be a kill shot? Oh, I love and hate this question. In theory, absolutely yes. Hold on, let me go back to something else so we don't just stare at this the whole time. Okay, hold on. Let me go back home. Yes, they absolutely can be. Would that be an abnormal filament? 100% yes. I mean, could this thing here do it? No, probably not. However, I will say this. If we get a pretty significant geomagnetic storm, like bigger than it should be, and it happens on October 8th, and then say on October 9th, this thing happens to have a pretty big impact with its solar wind. And somewhere in the middle, because this thing erupts tonight, we also get an impact from a filament. Boom, boom, boom. We could see a pretty severe geomagnetic storm, but we're certainly not in kill shot territory from any of this stuff. Jim, glad to hear you're enjoying the book. From what I hear, most of you who have received your book, it was everything you have come to expect from one of my publications. I am very happy to hear that. We aim to please. And of course, I put a lot of effort into that. So there's that too. My question is, do you think that there's a link between solar half cycles and our life cycles? Cats have 9 lives, so do we. I don't know how to answer that question, but I do think that cycles rule our lives and the sun's life and the planets and the cosmos. And so in general, yes. in terms of us having 9 lives and how that relates to the rest of your question, my friend, I'm not sure. Finally, caught you live. I've been wanting to ask if the recent comets and objects could be part of the galactic current sheet. Is it only dust, or are there larger pieces of debris? I mean, in theory, there should be more than average large pieces. I honestly think that we've just missed the interstellar objects thus far, and the fact that most of the interstellar objects don't come this close to the solar system. I mean, if one, just swung in and it never even got close to Mars, like if it swung past Jupiter, we'd never even see the darn thing. And Jupiter and Saturn act as pretty darn good guardians of the outer solar system as well. There's also the thing where, like, if it came directly vertically north south in some way, it would be hard to notice that as well. It's really hard to say. The most interesting thing is I can't wait to see what the Mars fleet shows us about the comet. I really wish they hadn't released those things from the rovers. Fly. That scared the bejesus out of me. One moment it's right next to my eye. The rover shots are so bad. They're like multi-second exposures. And so the comet actually is moving during the camera thing, which makes it look like a cylinder. And the comet's not cylinder shaped. That's just... it's like a multi-second exposure, so the comet is moving, and so it looks like a ball of light that went like this, and at the end you've got a cylinder-shaped thing of light across the screen. Anyway, nobody actually knows what to expect, but I'm very, very much eagerly awaiting in the next couple of days seeing the shots of this comet from the fleet. Lorraine, thank you again for the teal pair. Happy Monday. Thank you for your work. Here's a small bit for some coffee. I appreciate that, Chad. I do like my coffee. Phase shifting, phase cycles, life cycles are shifting, phases linked with solar half cycle phase. Sorry, I did say a bit out there. I mean, a half solar cycle is 5.5 years. So... Just see Warlock. Maybe type it out in detail and send it to me on Twitter. I do read that stuff more than I read my email. You inspired me to get a red light therapy bulb. Scott, that's fantastic. It does wonders. Trust me. Grand, good to see you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And are we caught up? That's glorious. Will you be at the ranch this Friday or headed to the expo? That's an excellent question. I'm not entirely sure. I know Saturday I will be at the expo. Friday I have the children. Saturday I have off. So, and I'm talking at 1:00 on Saturday at the expo. So there's that. Mike and Barb are making so much noise out there. It's okay. They're allowed. We love them. We love Mike and Barb. Is LIMB an acronym? No, it's LIMB, and it's a stupid thing. They consider the sides of the sun like its limbs, like where its limbs would be. It's dumb, I know, but it's the official terminology. Katie Light, it's so lovely to see you as always, and thank you very much for the teal pair. Boy, they are really making a racket out there. Can you guys hear Mike and Barb out there? I think they're trolling me. I'm being trolled in real life. Carbon overland. Yeah, I would say Friday's unlikely, just because I'm going to have to be out at the actual expo for the most part on Saturday. Does mainstream science dismiss the importance of the galactic current sheet? Oh, yeah. They literally act like it has no impact. Even though they're fully well aware that the sun's current sheet can cause full-fledged geomagnetic storms here on Earth. But what happens when the galaxy's version hits a solar system? I say it can cause a full-fledged magnetic storm throughout a solar system, and that's exactly what we're seeing. But heaven forbid, they should just scale things up one level. Anyway. When I say it like that, they sound real stupid, don't they? Did you ever see or show the Air Force white paper they did in the 1950s? Talked about mice and low density magnetic fields. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't remember. I have shown something like 11,000 papers. I have read way over 100,000 in the time of this channel. Did I answer the $50 question? Which one was that? I think I did. I don't think I missed a $50 question. Pretty sure, anyway. All right. How many Omaha tickets have been sold? You guys want me to look at this right now? Okay. Okay, fine, but I'm not going to show you guys this one because I actually have to type in things like passwords. In 3 days, 70 total tickets have been sold. Omaha, 15 of those. Orlando way out in front with 33 sold already. That's crazy. Las Vegas in last place with only 7. Then again, that one's not until March. People have some time. Oh, this says 72. All right, cool. All right, so we're going to go back to being able to see myself and all of this. Oh, this fly. You are so asking for it, fly. Biomagnetics. I've heard of that before, but that's also a very broad field. Lance, sorry to hear that about Sydney. Susie says, what is your favorite coffee? I mean, just coffee. I'm not a snob, and I don't know enough about coffee to be like, I like this coffee, but not that coffee. I really have no idea. You know, somebody just said no saltiness tonight. Maybe the salt lamp was all the saltiness we could handle here, and it just kept me away. Yeah. Adrian, we didn't talk about which one you're coming to. Everyone, make Adrian come to one of the winter tour events. Make him do it. It will be fun. HCOV, you are very welcome. Will there be any sound when the sun changes colors? There might be, but I couldn't even begin to describe it. If it happens, there's going to be no question what you're hearing. Put it that way. How does the reservations work versus buying tickets? I don't know what you're asking me there. I mean, like, whether you call it buying tickets or reserving your spot there, just on the winter tour page, that's the way to do it. The one that I've been linking. All right. All right, guys, this has been fun. There's some good stuff coming tomorrow morning in the news, but appreciate you all being here.